Okay, and welcome to this very special webinar on finding resilience through action despite COVID-19, presented by the Global Travel and Tourism Resilience Council in association with World Travel Market and Travel Weekly here in the UK. We're absolutely delighted to have Mr. Edmund Bartlett with us today. He's one of the most active ministers of tourism on the planet and has initiated efforts around resiliency with the establishment of the Global Tourism Resilience and Crisis Management Centre in Jamaica and soon to be in Nepal and Kenya, followed by many other countries. In this challenging time, it's important that we share good guidance and thought leadership with the travel sector. So who better to speak with than yourself, Minister? Travel companies worldwide are seeking guidance that allows them to maximise this time and be ready to rebound once the virus is under control. So let's get started. Welcome, Minister Bartlett. Just tell us quickly a bit about how things are in Jamaica currently.
Well, I think Jamaica is trying, first of all, to understand this phenomenon called COVID-19. And we're responding by borrowing best practices as we see them. Learning more about the steps that we are to take, understanding what the individual responsibilities are, certainly relying heavily on scientific evidence and facts to guide our direction in terms of the actions that will flow. The government has taken a number of very strong measures, one of which is to create a whole public education program to enable the citizens to understand how to act. The whole business of social distancing, the whole business of enabling hygienic practices in every area, and also to know how to behave with visitors who come in. And then we took the position afterwards that the transmission of the virus is by human vector. And so since that is the case, then the human vectors must themselves be knowledgeable, and they must act in protection of themselves, while at the same time ensuring that the virus stays as far as possible from them as is practical. The second big element of it was to deal with border controls. How do we prevent the inflow of the virus that is transported into our destination? That called for some very strong action. Closing the borders is never the first resort at all, but it is a real position which we had to take. So we began with those countries that had high incidence of the virus, and we sought to create travel restrictions, and then it graduated after that to hard positions of closing borders and access to them. As it stands today, almost every country that is of value on the globe has had to do that type of border restriction. And so therefore Jamaica's position has more or less fallen in line with what the global position is as far as access is concerned to the destination. And third is to mobilize the human resources that are available to us for better action, to build infrastructure, and also to ensure that the health facilities in Jamaica are improved to a high degree. I think most third world countries like ourselves struggle with the social budgets, and so health and education and so on are always challenged in terms of making sure the right and the appropriate allocations are made. This, however, created a new paradigm, because now we had to take resources from everywhere and to make sure that the health budgets are properly financed so that these infrastructure could be added. And finally, in terms of what's happening here, is that the commercial and business activities have almost come to a halt. Certainly for tourism, we have had a literal shutdown of the industry, and that has implications in terms of job displacement and also the potential for social challenges.
Yeah. So that's what we've seen in this part of the world. Obviously, the tourism sector is on the front line of this. It's probably the sector that's hit hardest and earliest. So are you currently trying to support those companies in Jamaica to try to get them through this period so that they can be still around when the bookings come back?
So that's part two of the response. The first is to ensure that the infrastructure is placed for health security. The second is how do we help to create cushion or to create a stimulus package, as is referred to these days, to enable business to operate at least minimally during this difficult period. And in the case of tourism, we have established a program called CARES, which is the COVID response that we're making to enable workers in particular of the industry to have a cash grant after displacement, which would help them to carry through the difficult period. We're looking also at a business response that we call BEST, acronym that we create to enable the companies now, those who are tourism entities that are operational, to have responses from fiscal engineering that we're doing, and also some monetary engineering. So the banking system has been brought into play to provide soft, if not interest-free loans, to look at moratorium on existing loans, to look at mortgage reduction in rates, as well as to look at how to reschedule loans as well, and to defer payments on loans. So there is a whole menu of fiscal and monetary arrangements that are being put in place to help to cushion the impact of the fallout from COVID-19.
Okay, so this is obviously a global issue, Minister Bartlett, and every country is, to a degree, fighting it or preparing to fight it. When we set up the Resilience Council, and you've been very active in that, there's always a lot of talk about collaboration and doing things together and sharing information. I don't think anybody thought we'd be talking about something like this. We've talked about a lot of events that have happened over the years, and some that have had a massive impact on travel, but nothing on this scale. Firstly, just put into perspective, from your perspective, how you see this current crisis in terms of its scale and the impact that it's going to have.
But you're absolutely right. This is unprecedented. I think in all the disruptions, the global disruptions that we've had, I'm yet to find where any has had the kind of global impact that COVID-19 is having. The last count, Lee, was 160 countries that are affected, and there were only about 30 countries in the world that had not yet reported any incidents of the virus. And as we speak, more countries are reporting that they have had incidences. So we're seeing something that is redefining the whole role, it seems, of mankind on planet Earth. It's inviting a new order, and it's creating a new norm, and it is causing, I think, a fallout in the economies of the world that is going to be unprecedented. The stock markets of every nation is down, and some almost totally obliterated. The travel has been brought to a halt all across the world. People are being mandated to stay at home, to work from home. You know, it's a whole new order that is emerging, and I think that mankind is going to have to take stock as a result of these events on its own stewardship on planet Earth. And it's going to be a new discussion, a whole new dispensation that will ensue.
Yeah, we'll get into that bit more detail about what you see emerging in a minute. But what about this idea of people cooperating more? Do you think that we've seen levels of cooperation as a result of this crisis that we've not seen before? It's one of the things you've always preached, that people and countries need to work together on these things that are cross-border international issues. Do you think that's actually happening this time?
Well, I must say that if we're to look at positives that can come from it, that's definitely one. We're seeing a greater level of collaboration, global collaboration, than competition, as has been the feature of our commercial and social existence. So this is a possibility that man will have a better sense of the relationship that he must have, and that the issues of love and sharing and charity would be displayed in a far more active way. Certainly we see small things, Lee, that happen in our own little communities, where people go to supermarket and there's a shortage, for example, and somebody who was able to get an adequate supply would offer to give one item or two items, so as to enable the distribution to be as equitable as possible. You know, you go to supermarkets and they're saying, okay, we won't sell you an entire box of something or an entire carton of something, but you could get units, 3, 4, 5, so that the next person who comes will be able to get. So it is a new paradigm that we're seeing here in terms of human relationship, and that could all go well in the end, because it could make us a far more united world, and it could to improve significantly the prospects of world peace and a greater collaboration between peoples.
Yeah, I suppose we are learning very much that we are literally all in it together, and your actions that you take here day to day can have huge implications on other people that you've never met before. And actually, that's one of the things about travel, that your actions and your decisions about where you travel and what you do when you travel equally have impacts on those destinations. So it'd be interesting to see what happens when this crisis does abate, about what people think about when they go on their travels and what they do on those trips and so on. Do you think that's going to change? People are going to have different ideas about what they do when they go away and the kind of things they do and the impacts they have?
Absolutely. You know, we've been grappling with tourism ethics for a long time. And I think that the struggle has always been to help to define relationship actions, and how do you respond to other people? How do you give the respect to their human rights that you ought to? How do you appreciate their differences and celebrate the similarities that you have? How in the end do you respect cultures? And how do you enable people to have a better appreciation of even themselves as a result of your own appreciation of them? So this is causing us to take stock, and this is driving us into a new dimension of respect and regard for each other, and for what the differences that may exist in our different cultures and spaces. I think that one of the big takeaway from this is going to be a deeper and better appreciation of hygiene and of how to deal with the environment, and of course, more importantly, the education, the knowledge that must be developed by everybody. So we're going to see a greater sense of commitment to cleanliness and to health security and and safety measures in our hotels all across the world. And that's going to augur well for the world community, and indeed how we will be able to exist better and be able to sustain the environment in a stronger and more effective way.
Yeah. Do you fear that what's happened will put large numbers of people off traveling? maybe thinking about the older age groups where clearly they are most vulnerable to this particular virus, and they may think maybe going overseas, particularly long haul, maybe not for them anymore. What do you think about that?
I think there's also going to be a demographic shift. Certainly, the next wave of travelers are going to be younger people. They're going to be more millennials and immediate post-millennials. I think that the baby boomers will probably see the end of that passage in time. And so it's going to have implications also for the kind of marketing that you do, and also the kind of products that you're going to develop in the marketplace. The impact of technology is going to be a big area, and how people are going to view virtual experiences. The impact, I believe, that this change will have on millennial travel could be significant, because they, for one, will not have the wealth. The other real fact is that the world's economic situation is going to be put in a tailspin, and in a lot of instances, we're literally going to be starting over. And it's going to mean cost efficiencies. It's going to also mean that the value of labor is going to be, driven by the market conditions. So the affordability may be issues. So we will perhaps have to build back on the basis of creating great, what you call customer value propositions that are going to be attractive and effective because they are affordable to a population of travelers that are going to be less wealthy.
Yeah, it's also, I guess you could say, it's exposed business models in the industry. I mean, the airlines have taken the initial big hit because they've had to ground fleets, and a lot of them are calling for government help, maybe even nationalisation again. And obviously, without the connectivity, you're not going to have the travel industry come back as it was before. Do you worry that there's going to be some long-term damage there?
Well, I think the aviation industry has gotten a hit, but I think the call is for everyone to understand, how do we reposition them? How do we provide the kind of fiscal and monetary support, A, from governments, and also B, from international partners, to enable the airlines to bounce back and bounce back quickly. But also, how do the airlines use technology to create cost effectiveness? How do they use the technology to create better services for the individuals, and also to reduce unit cost, so that the price of traveling can be more affordable to the ordinary person who wants to travel. So I think it's going to be a combination of government action through fiscal measures, and also through providing monetary support in some instances. Then there's going to have to be an issue of how commodity prices move on the market, particularly oil prices, since for the better part of this, the foreseeable future, aviation is still going to be driven by fossil fuels. Of course, if the technology that brings hydrogen into the mix is incorporated quickly, then cost will be significantly affected in the positive way. So I think it's going to challenge us for more innovation, to look at how technology can be used better to facilitate more cost-effective delivery of aviation services.
Yeah, and obviously every business is being affected by this, large and small, whether you're an airline or just a local provider of tours or excursions. And every business, or most businesses, will have a crisis management plan in place prior to this. They're now rapidly rewriting them and ripping them up, probably because they've never seen anything quite like this. So what advice and guidance do you have for businesses in terms of their crisis management adjustments and their plans going forward?
Well, I think first of all, what we have to do is to have a clear vision of what the situation is, based on facts and scientific evidence, and proper use of data. then I think that the business needs to have a wise leadership, a leadership that understands how to enable the appropriate mix of hard business measures and social measures. And I want to emphasize that because business has to recognize social corporate responsibility now as a big part of the way forward, because the collaboration between the community and business is what's going to enable it to grow and to grow fast. And thirdly, I think that business needs to reinvent itself. It's a whole new disruptive process that has to come to create a business that is going to be far more responsive to community, that is going to be far more reflective of what the will and wishes of people are. And most importantly, business is going to help to define new ways in which the world and the society is going to collaborate and work better.
Yeah. So it looks like we're in for a period where, you know, a lot of business as usual isn't happening. There aren't many bookings coming in. There isn't many customers to deal with. So a lot of businesses will be preparing for when that happens again, but they'll have time on their hands to you know, maybe recalibrate slightly. What advice do you have about to businesses about what they can do in this period?
Lee, before we go there's one other point that I want to make about business and its future role, is that business is going to help to make markets. So that the responsibility is going to stretch beyond just creating new products. It's going to enable the development of markets for its own good, because it cannot survive and sustain without markets. And so key elements of market development and market making will have to also become part of this new business profile that we have in the future. Sorry to interrupt that question.
Okay.
Yes.
And I'm sure many are going through, you know, I mean, you mentioned data a minute ago, but when you're trading and you're busy, it's very easy to ignore, you know, the data that's coming in and reassessing things each time you make decisions. I suppose now's the time where maybe they can have a look at their businesses, bring in as much data as they can, go through the analytics and you know, discover what it tells them about their businesses and what they were doing before and what they may do differently later.
Lee, you know, one of the things that is also emerging is that data and business are going to define the future of the world. And it is big data that is going to give them the analytic capacity to make good decisions. Decisions that will flow from what the market is saying, what people are requiring, and what the world needs. Business is going to have to generate and mobilize the capital to achieve the objectives of what data is providing. And this is a huge order, I think, that all of us have to wrap our heads around as we go into the future. Analytics is going to define the way forward. Even in this moment when we are isolating ourselves, so to speak, and everybody's closing borders and instructions are being given to stay at home and work from home. What does it mean to work from home? You know, there comes the technology and the Internet of Things. And then there is the issue now of how do you build capacity to manipulate that? So a whole new training and retraining program will have to take place. So getting data to determine how many people are where and what is to be applied, how and when, are going to be the critical things now. So we think that that data manipulation is going to be the biggest and strongest tool that this recovery program will have.
Yeah. The industry also heavily relies on its human capital, you know, and you mentioned retraining there. So I guess there's a danger that skills are lost in this period while we can't really trade. So what do you see happening in terms of keeping those skills in the business, in the industry, keeping the people active and retraining them?
Well, you know, we here in Jamaica, and let me give you an example on that, in tourism, we are using this period to provide for the displaced workers an opportunity for online training and certification. So we use the opportunity to scale up the quality of the human capital within your area so that people can offer more and add greater value to the experiences that the visitor is likely to have when they come to Jamaica. I think that this is a small act in a country that can be replicated across the world, because skills are critical, but skill requirements change depending on what the needs are in the market. And so I think that the new norm that is being created now is going to require new skill sets to enable the development and manipulation of new processes and also for new products to emerge. So whilst we recognize that existing skills are important to be honed, we have to look at creating the new skill sets that are going to respond to the new demographics and the new demands of the market.
Yeah.
And so we must spend the time doing that. And one of the things to Lee that we have to face is the fact that the elderly generation, the baby boomers that are on their way out, and the ones who, according to the scientists, are most vulnerable to the negative effect of COVID-19, are going with a certain level of skills and a certain level of institutional capacity. So we have to recognize that and to pull from them as much as we can during this period too, so that the world doesn't lose the impact and value of their experience and skills and knowledge over time.
Yeah, I guess that's partly what the council set up to do. It's about learning from past events. So, and I'm sure the council will be very active in analysing what's happening over this period and what we can learn from it. What will the council be doing in the next few months to make sure it's gathering the data, but also looking at it from a global point of view?
Well, the Resilience Centre, which works very closely with the council, in fact, you know, we're symbiotic, and I happen to be co-chair of both. We are spending a lot of time now developing data from different countries. We're looking at best practices all across the globe now. We've also just appointed a coordinator for pandemics, and this former pathologist, head of the department at our university here, is having that responsibility to coordinate with the health agencies across the world, the World Health Organization and CDC. And in our region, we have something called CAFA, but I'm sure each region has its own health arrangements. So her job is going to be to collaborate with all these areas and to build a whole repository of best practices, and also to get data as to how different applications have had impacts on the health arrangements in different parts of the world. And these are important information which in time we will use to advise ourselves in terms of what action to take and what type of programs to develop to assist countries to manage these type of pandemics which are going to come. More of it will happen in the future. Then we also have to look very seriously now at the whole business of global analytics and to get data. We are working with some of our IT experts in the area to build the capacity to store and first of all to mine the data, and then to analyze it and to store it and for use in helping to develop management decisions that small countries in particular will have to make in relation to their resources and the resource allocation, and how best to manipulate the physical things that are around them to bring value to their space. And finally, to build human capital, which we feel very strongly about, because it's not just about training and development of knowledge, but it's how to convert that knowledge into material value so that it offers the opportunity for prosperity for people and the building of their well-being. So the center is going to be focusing heavily on data gathering and analysis. It's going to be looking very strongly at best practices and to set up a compendium of best practices that will be available for people to draw on. And thirdly, we spend a lot of time on human capital development to enable a better appreciation of how to manipulate this data and how to use it to effect well-being.
Yeah, I mean, almost every country in the world is going to be trying to work out how they bounce back from this. So resiliency is just going to be more important than ever. But what about sort of solidarity here, that countries working together as opposed to against each other? Do you think through the centre, maybe through the council, we can engender a sense of solidarity that the work that you do actually helps everybody?
Well, you know, Lee, here in the Caribbean, we've been talking a bit about multi-destination tourism, for example, as a strategy to bring countries together that have diverse products, but who can collaborate rather than compete to present a menu of experiences to the market that is also affordable, and that also could create a cost-effective arrangement, and also a space, a market space for big entrepreneurs and also medium-sized entrepreneurs, while at the same time providing an opportunity for investment, for real investment by small countries that hitherto might not have the opportunity to operate on the global market. So we see that what is going to emerge from this is that more countries are going to see the need to collaborate so as to effect more quality products, a better variety of products, to give more value for money to the new demographics who are going to be less wealthy and therefore are going to require more for less. So you can come into a Caribbean experience, for example, and get the value of 5 different countries on one package. And so we're going to see more of that. For long haul activity, for aviation, for example, it's going to be useful. People who have 3 and 4 weeks of vacation, which is going to come, would want to have an opportunity to spend it over 5 or 4 countries rather than in one country. So all of those are going to offer opportunities for greater collaboration between countries. We're also going to be searching to find technological solutions together, scientific solutions together. And countries are going to find that it is easier to collaborate to succeed than to compete.
Yeah. Do you, it sounds a bit like you think maybe the era of very cheap travel is at an end. I mean, obviously that's more relevant in short haul from the UK. I don't think the Caribbean's ever considered to be a low cost destination. But if low cost travel, as we've been enjoying it now for the best part of 20 odd years, is at an end, does that really change the nature of the travel sector overall?
Well, I'm not so sure if low-cost travel is at an end. We may very well see a new era of low-cost travel, okay, as we seek to reposition travel and tourism, based on the fact that in a lot of instances, we're going to see the literal restart of business. We already see that commodity prices are trending down. We already see, for example, that oil prices have hit all-time low. And so that may very well occur over an extended period. Those will have implications in terms of the cost of everything, including the cost of travel. So we will also have to incentivize travel. In other words, we're going to have to create packages that are very, 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 very attractive. Yeah. And that's going to mean price attractiveness. So we may very well see that travel initially starts back at very affordable. I don't like to use the word cheap because cheap in my mind is negative. So, but I want to use affordable travel. So we are going to probably see a lot more packages that are affordable to the average income earner.
You did mention briefly earlier on technology and virtual, and we're all, as we're doing now, we're learning to engage virtually across the internet. Do you see the rise of more virtual experiences sort of becoming part of mainstream travel? And if so, is that a good thing? Because really, we want people to get on planes and go and visit places, don't we?
Yes, of course. You know, the people who talk about how human sensories impact and relate to scientific development suggests that there's a way that through virtual reality they could connect to human emotions, and they're trying that. It seems to be working in some instances, because we do see that a lot of the younger people are gravitating towards virtual experiences. And so it may very well be that the new travel demographic, being younger people, might find it useful to use virtual media to enable the experiences that they want. We also see that virtual reality, for example, is redefining the way people connect. And the fact that you could be anywhere in the world and enjoy the Niagara Falls virtually. And that is cost effective. So initially that may be a very, very strong way of the market redefining itself. People will travel because there's nothing to replace the person-to-person connection. There's no technology that can enable that. So people will have travel, but there's going to be greater and greater use of virtual technologies to, first of all, give the initial, what I call the appetizers. How do people begin to know about destinations and about places that will then excite their interest to go? So I see the technologies expanding in terms of the capabilities that it provides for people to have a knowledge and an understanding of where they would want to go, and also to help them to make decisions as even when to go. I also see that virtual reality is going to change the way that training arrangements are provided, and how we could do mass training in a short time. The Internet of Things is redefining skill sets. It's also changing the way the workplace is structured. And that has impact on the labor force, because there's issues of displacement possibilities that will flow from it. Now, how do we retrain? And we touched on that earlier on. And how do we retrain in a quick and effective way? And virtual reality is going to play a big part in doing that, in mass training across the globe.
Yeah. We've talked quite a bit about what might emerge maybe in the longer term, but let's just finish up by talking about what you think is going to happen in the near term as this initial spike abates, how the industry starts to recover. What are your predictions really for the next, for the rest of the year? Do you see that there's a feeling that travel will bounce back quite vociferously because pent up demand and so on, and people still want to go, but there will be still concerns about the ongoing impact of this virus if it's not under control around the globe? How do you see things panning out in the next 12 months or so?
Well, it's not as clear as I would want in terms of my own vision as to how quickly we'll bounce back and what will happen in the next 2 to 3 years. But certainly the indications are that if we have flattening of the so-called curve by way of reduction of community transmission of the virus across the globe, we could see a return to some level of normalcy by the first quarter of next year. And that would mean that travel would begin and travel would become the first of the economic activities of the globe to bounce back. We see ourselves as, I think, being the resilient ones and the ones that could give the quickest possibility for wealth conversion. And therefore, there's going to be a big push for tourism and travel ahead of much of the other industries. So I think that within 2 to 3 years, tourism could be back, not at the level that it is now, but certainly back to growth ways, and new products will emerge. Absolutely is an opportunity, I believe, for redefining so many things. And I can see in the aviation area enormous innovation there. I can see also in terms of the hotel services and what's going to be required to provide seamlessness within tourism space, and technology playing a bigger and more important role. And finally, I think that we're going to see an atmosphere, an ambience within tourism that is far more responsive to hygienic practices, and that tourism ethics is going to finally find its way as people relate better to each other and provide an overall more wholesome respect for cultures and for diversity.
Yeah, great. I mean, I guess initially, as destinations like Jamaica are able to reopen their borders, they're going to need to know that they're not opening up to potential infections coming back in, and the difficulty will be knowing which country has dealt with it, which countries are still dealing with it, and who you can allow to move around. That looks to me like it's going to be a very, very complicated job over the next 12 months, as maybe hopefully the science comes in and we find a cure or a vaccine for this virus. But that could be the biggest issue maybe in the near term.
It could be, but it also could be that we recognize the new norm, which would be life with COVID-19. And so countries would perhaps be looking less at how the incidence of the virus has been managed in areas as to how you can develop life coping techniques. And so sometimes it may very well be that we feel that larger countries with more resources will be able to give you a better response, but smaller countries with better hygiene sometimes could give you the optimal response. So I think that you're right. We will be looking initially a lot on source markets that have shown greater resilience to the COVID-19, and those who also have recovered better and are able to report, as close to normalcy in terms of their health security as is possible. So the process therefore could be slower than we anticipate. But I think that as the new norm sets in and people learn to live with this virus in the same way that we've learned to live with all the other viruses that have hit the world over the years, what happened with the avian flu, what happened with SARS, what happened with Ebola, what happened to all the others. We've learned to live with them, to manage them, and to eventually develop immunities. Well, there's that discussion about the herd immunity effect. And so time will do a lot in terms of finally creating what is the defining arrangements between countries and who will travel from where to where.
Yeah, and just finally then, obviously we've seen this crisis impact the travel industry's ability to get together physically with cancelled events. Obviously world travel market run a number around the world. Do you see a time, look forward to a time when the industry can get back together again and see each other, shake hands and look each other in the eye and meet up again rather than do things virtually?
Yes, indeed. And I gave a timeline earlier in my comments that sometime starting first quarter of 21, I could see that much of the global activities will perhaps rebound, and we start having physical contacts in a very fine way like we're used to. I think about the middle of next year. So I'm looking at a 12 to 18 months period when the world will come back to itself and the normal meetings and trade shows and so on that we normally have, where we bring products to people in a physical and proximate way, will return. I look forward to that. So let's work hard at it. Let's continue to give positive information and to drive a greater sense of urgency to find a solution to COVID-19 so that we could return as quickly as possible to the ways of how tourism and travel is meant to be, people interacting with people with proximity.
Good stuff. Look, that's a great way to end today's webcast. Thank you very much, Minister Bartlett, for your time today. I'm sure you're extremely busy, so we appreciate you giving us your time. For those of you who want to know more, please visit the Resilience Council website to look at all our future events and news, etc. And a big thanks to all our backers and sponsors and supporters, without whom we can't do our really valuable work, and we hope to be bringing you more insight and information and resources and advice in the near future. So thank you very much. Thanks again to Minister Bartlett. See you soon, hopefully. Yeah, and all the best. Keep well.